Welcome to the show. Today, my guest is Shreya, and I'm really excited about this because I think it will be very useful to my listeners. Um, Shreya is a lifestyle architect, which is a word I hadn't heard to that point. A health tech and she does luxury design and a built firm. Now you have to explain to my listeners what that means. And you are, at your young age, the CEO of all of these facets of business that you have. And I just want to introduce you with a quote because I think that that tells a lot about what you do. And that is, health isn't just about what you eat and how you move. It is also about where you live. And I might add, how you live.
Yeah.
So I'll hand this over to you. I'm sure you can introduce yourself better than I did.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and hopefully be able to impart some wisdom to any of your listeners. I really specialize, and I think my mission in my life is to be able to help people create healthy and healing lifestyles in their spaces. I think we've become so obsessed about what we eat, how we move. But there's this big piece that people seem to have forgotten about, which is the spaces we live in, because they're nourishing us the same way that food nourishes us. But we just don't really think about it. And that's really been my big thing. My mission in my life really is to be able to bring awareness to that because I think I have a journey where I became unwell and I started realizing that it was the other things, it's the other dimension. Um, that was the cause of the root problem. But I spent so much time thinking about the food, the supplements, everything else, but not this part. And I think about health a little bit like it's not just a three-legged stool, where you've got what your mindset is, because I think that's crucial. It's how what you eat, how you nourish your body, how you move. But there's a bit that's also what's your space around you. And yes, there's things like connection and love and those things I think and community, which I also think is really important as well.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
there's this one piece that also is part of this table that people seem to have forgotten. And that's really what I have dedicated myself to be doing over the last 14 plus years. Is I have a luxury interior design and construction company, and I have a health tech company, and I've sort of pivoted both of these businesses into really focusing on that.
Hmm. And what I really want to, point our listeners to is that you're not just talking about design and, the comfort that we feel in our home, as important as that is, that we feel comfortable in, in terms of furniture and whatever else is important. You speak to the toxicity that
Yeah.
is in our environments, and you speak to, well, if I would put it bluntly, nonsensical laws that that are really bad for our health, and but they look really good on a chart, or a resume or something like that. So um, it's it's really, there's so many points I could start with. So maybe let's start with your personal health crisis because I think that set you off in that direction.
Yeah, so I was in my early 20s, kind of when you're meant to be, you know, living your life and having, conquering everything and feeling amazing and really at the start of my career. And I had a couple of things happen to me at the same time. So I had one thing, and I think they all kind of compounded effects on each other. And so I lost someone very, very close to me, and I internalized that grief,
Mm,
which was it was really hard. And I am someone who has to be the go-getter, has to be the one in control, has to always be that. So rather than dealing with my grief, I internalized it. But what I did do was retreat. And so I didn't hang out with as many people. I just wanted to stay home because it was my safety zone. And unfortunately, what also then happened was I ended up getting really bad mold toxicity and I had a hormonal problem. And so what happened is, and back in those times in the UK, because I'm based in London, nobody really knew what mold was. So I actually was, and I remember going around to many different doctors being like, something's wrong with my body. And they were like, and I actually, one of the GPs actually said to me that it's in your head.
Yes, I've heard that many times.
And I was like, what do you mean it's in my head? And he goes, it's in your head because he goes, I could, because they, for my blood panels, they didn't do the kind of blood panels you're meant to do in functional medicine and that kind of stuff. They couldn't find a problem. So he was like, but I was like, I know myself. I've been someone who's run multiple businesses since I was 16 years old. I'm very active, but I couldn't muster the energy to get out of my bed. I also put on a terrible amount of weight, which meant I meant was even more insecure. So I was less likely to go out. So I was more stuck at home. So it was this vicious cycle. And it was actually a biohackers podcast that I was listening to and I was driving to work. And and I've never felt so seen because I felt like I was going crazy because
Mm.
everyone, all the doctors and everybody kept on being like, nothing is wrong with you. You're fine. You're not listening to us. You're not taking the right kind of supplements. Or I would take stuff and it would help me a little bit, but it wouldn't. This is for the mold side, and I can come back on the hormone side separately
Hmm.
because as I said, it was all together.
Hmm.
Um, but this podcast, I had to pull over on the side of the road, and I remember thinking, ding, 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 ding. This is everything I had, and I felt so seen, and I started crying because it was just a moment of like, okay, maybe this is the answer
Hmm.
um, to what is wrong with me. And so then I had to actually work with the doctor. I had to get everything done in the US because nobody could deal with me here because this is over 10 years ago, and mold really wasn't a big thing in the UK. It is a bit
Even
more.
though it's everywhere. I lived in
Even
London.
though
I mean, it's
Exa-
everywhere.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. And then for the hormone side of things as well, because this was also going on at the same time. And I had a doctor say to me, and I was 21 years old, and I will never forget this as well. And that's when I really started, is he said to me, I was 21 years old, and he goes to me, he goes, I think you should give up the dream of being able to have children when you grow up.
It's insane.
And and I was like, what? I'm 21 and I've always wanted to have a family. So
Hmm.
it shocked me. That basically made me realize that mainstream medicine was missing a piece. It was more of a bandage rest because then I kept on being like, but why do I have this problem? And they couldn't give me the answer to the why.
Hmm.
So I went on this journey of realizing that, you know what? I'm a problem solver. I think through problems at work. I like to be in control, so I need to figure this out. I can't outsource my health to other people. I need to be able to take ownership of my health myself. So I went down this journey of just learning everything I could possibly learn. So I studied functional medicine, I studied naturopathy to basically heal myself. And in the process, and I remember when I went to a functional medicine and a nutritionist, they said to me, they were like, have you heard of endocrine disruptive chemicals? And I was
Hmm.
21 years old. What is endocrine disruptive chemicals? And they were like, there are these things in your cleaning products, your makeup products, and stuff that affect your hormones. And I remember going home and opening up my bathroom cabinet, in which I also kept my cleaning products in my bathroom. So I had all my makeup, all my skincare, and just basically looking at this plethora of products and just being like, how are we allowing young women to
Hmm.
use stuff that is going to cause them to have hormonal problems? And we're completely unaware. There's no warning label. At least on like cigarettes, there's like those the photographs of like the people with cancer. There's nothing on this.
Yeah,
And
and
I
there should be. There
There
should be
should be.
really. Yeah. And
And
sometimes the most expensive stuff has the most dangerous things
yes,
in there.
I was like, I've spent a fortune on all this stuff, but it's so bad for me. And I'm like, here I am trying to understand what's wrong with my cycle, being told that I might never be able to have children. And some of this is because of the stuff that I'm putting on my skin. It didn't make sense to me. And I just couldn't
Mhm.
understand how this was allowed. And so this is why so much of what I do right now is I want to bring awareness because I think these conversations are not happening. Marketing, we use words, but you've got to read behind the words to realize there's a lot of other things that are happening and we're completely blissfully unaware and it's not fair. I don't think it's right.
No, I don't think it's right either. And I think it's it's actually criminal to a
Yes.
point. Again, my listeners know I like to be blunt. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was yeah, 20 years ago, I was really, really ill, and I did the same thing you did. I said, I'm going to, since I'm a biologist also by degree, I said, I want to find out. So I educated myself on the things, you educated yourself on, and I had that same reaction of, I just don't believe it.
Yeah.
I just don't believe it. And um, what I what I like though is what you did next. And that is to say, I'm going to make that my mission since I work with interior designs and I have I have this sense for environments, not just in terms of aesthetics, but you know, you had the capability and you educated yourself on how to go deeper. And one thing you studied, which I have never heard before, is I think it's environment. No, help me with the biology that you studied.
Building biology.
Say that again?
Building biology.
Exactly. And as a biologist, I was like, what? Help me out.
Yeah, so building biology actually, so in my journey of trying to figure out all the other disciplines of health, so functional medicine, naturopathy, I then realized,
Hmm.
okay, there's a space, and building biology was the one that I discovered. And it was like light bulbs went off in my head because
Hmm.
remember, I had a design and construction company. My family had been in the industry for years. And so never before was there a discipline or even conversations where your space impacts your health. And
Hmm.
I would go around and I would talk to the plumbers and I would talk to our AC guys, I would talk to the joiners and ask them questions, being like, how do you address things like mold? How do you address things like this? What are the VOCs? And they were godsmacked because they were like, what are these questions? And it's really funny. And then I started digging into building safety regulations because I was like, we have these things as building safety. So you think the word safety should be health. But safety is fire, or it's safety is health and safety. But there is nothing about safety of your health. On the contrary, most of the stuff where it comes to fire, especially after in the UK, particularly after Glenfield, the fire that we had, the massive
Hmm.
fire, they've
Hmm.
they've really increased the amount of fire regulation. Most of the fire retardant stuff and chemicals that we use for fire protection are horrendously bad for our health.
Oh.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, actually, a lot of the fire, the spray you can put on a lot of furniture to help stop it from actually, it's meant to be fire resistant.
I've never heard of that. Uh-huh.
Yes, you can put stuff on. It only really lasts for like a few minutes, and the fumes are so toxic. So we're putting these things on without health. But anyway, building biology is one of those disciplines that kind of addresses this concept because it really looks at human evolution. So it thinks about, okay, and it takes into account everything of nature is our golden standard. We've evolved under a certain set of conditions, and that's what our body thrives under.
Hmm.
But modern society's kind of taken us completely the other direction. And so here it's like, how do we bring ourselves back as close as possible to that equilibrium of what feels great? Natural ventilation, good quality lighting, good quality water, temperature. Like, it's really funny because when you think about it, it's just so simple. Like, it's like none of this is complicated.
Yeah.
We've just overly complicated it, and people are like, well, I'm like, it's just clean air, and clean air is not just, it's your ventilation, it's making sure you have less indoor air pollutants, it's water, it's your lights, it's managing radiation. It's
Yeah.
things like that, and then that to me is the baseline of health, and then you can start to think about, okay, what are the optimization bits you want to add on top of that, you know? How can you get maybe a little bit biohacky or things like that? But the basics is really simple.
Yeah, and it's not that expensive either. And maybe that's part of the problem. You can't sell so many products. Though I have to say, I have a special water filter in my place, and that was not cheap. So,
No. Yeah,
you know,
water filters, unfortunately, to get a really good quality water filter is really expensive. You are starting to see the prices drop, I think. Like air purifiers used to be really expensive. Now you can get good air purifiers and not that expensive a price. I'm hoping this the same thing's going to happen. But to me, again, this should just be part of it. Any development anyone does, this is what should be part of it. If you're a landlord renting a house, this is what should be compulsory to be putting in
yeah, yeah,
place.
yeah. They should look at the tubes and all the other things. And in
Yes,
London,
and
some
and
of
how
them
you
are
clean
100
it,
years old. Yeah.
and particularly when it comes to mold. Like it really shocks me how many houses, and I've had clients and even friends and stuff who've come in when they've purchased new properties or they're renting, and you can. And my nose is like a little bloodhound as well. Like I can
Uh-huh.
smell it from a mile away. And I then I'll walk in and I'll walk straight out, being like, I'm really sorry, but I can't spend time here. I sort of have PTSD because I remember how unwell, so I don't want to be in an environment that does that to me. Um, and it really shocks me how many buildings, everywhere I've traveled around the world, you can smell mold as a problem and people don't really address it properly. They just, it's a very simple way of when I've been in Asia, you just see the guy scraping it off and painting it over. I've seen people here in the UK just maybe cut it out, maybe put a bit of damp proof, and you're like that. You've not really fixed the problem. It's
No,
there. You can't
no,
just paint
no,
over it.
no. If you know anything about biology, you know what fungi do.
Exactly. It always shocks me, and I'm like, you've not fixed this. You've gone the contra. You're just pushing the problem down the line. Like,
Yeah. So let's go a little bit deeper into the problem with mold. Just for our listeners to understand. So, there are nervous system disruptors that disrupt all kinds of things in your body. And if you already are a sensitive person, that disruption will give you all kinds of symptoms that for a long time, at least I remember, for a long time I thought it's just, I'm just having a particularly bad year, or I don't understand why I don't function. And later I found out that I had mold in my blood.
yeah,
Yeah, small, small surprise that I couldn't do, it wasn't just aging, it was a huge problem. And just like you said, if I didn't go to a functional doctor, I would never have found out. Actually, it was a frequency machine that said you have a problem, a parasite problem, which is
yeah.
something we could talk about as well, and you have a mold problem. And I was not aware because nobody tells you these things. And the difference in my energy is flabbergasting.
Yeah, so I remember when I was I kept on getting sick. I would the biggest problem for me was just extreme fatigue.
Hmm.
So I'm someone by nature, I can force myself to get up and do things. So I was not someone because that's what the doctors were like, oh, but you've not got chronic fatigue that you can't like, that's why it's in your head. I was like, the difference is it takes a lot of energy for me to get up. But my nature is someone that even when I'm super burnt out, I can just keep on pushing through.
Mm, mm.
And but when you've not got the energy and the clear. So I was getting ill a lot. I really struggled with energy. I would get breathless when I'd walk up the stairs. And so the things that my clarity in my mind, I had a lot of brain fog, and I was in my early 20s. So people would say, firstly, I got told, oh, you're feeling depressed because of the loss that you had. The reason why you're breathless is because you put on a lot of weight and you're not working out. Your things like, so it was all this like all these other things, but actually there was a completely other problem. Oh, the brain fog it's not brain fog, it's in your head. Clarity in mind, no, that's nothing there. And I'm like, you know, I think, and
Yeah, and
then
you start, I'm sorry to interrupt you, you start having all kinds of reactions to foods and
exactly.
environments, and it seems
And
to get more and more and more by each month, which can drive
yes.
you absolutely bonkers. I think it drives you insane.
You're completely insane, and at the same time, you feel terrible about yourself anyway. And you've got the energy, and then you guys. I had really bad IBS, so I used to get a lot of stomach, and random things would give me rashes. I continuously had a runny nose. I felt ill, and it sort of. And then because your immune system and you're so eagerly triggered, you get a lot of other things. So my other allergies, for example, I remember my hay fever was horrendous that summer, even worse than usual. Other things started to make a difference. Now that I know how electromagnetic radiation can make impacts to your health as well, I think I was more hypersensitive then than I am now. So just you become more sensitive to things as well, and it becomes compounding. And I think I had it or it took me a long time to fix it. So it was like band-aid solutions, but without really getting on it. It didn't. I don't think I fully figured it out until about a year and a half after I started getting symptoms. And then it took me about 6 months worth of doing really deep detox burn to start to feel, okay, this is what I should feel like. And I remember that when you wake up and not having to force myself out of bed where you didn't just want to press the snooze button or just feel like, and I used to I remember that feeling of just wanting to like, I would lift my legs to be like, come on, we've got to get up.
Yeah.
We've got to do this.
Oh yeah, poor you. And I remember for me, it was just I was totally anxious. I would wake up so anxious, and I think it was also a mixture between the radiation, the phones, the wireless, and that those infections. Just for the listeners to understand, some of the things that are being called a problem of high sensitivity is not. It is actually toxicity in
Yes.
your body that creates that. And because we already have a very reactive nervous system, it's actually worse for us. And then we get top of it, we get told it's in our head and it's because you're so sensitive. And then that affects our self-worth. And then you get that vicious cycle you talked about. But you are doing something about that. You are creating an AI that bridges health science, consumer awareness, and technology so we can make wiser and more life-affirming choices. Do you want to tell us more about that I always like to offer solutions, not just ruminate on the problem.
Yeah, so what I'm doing is I think AI really allows us at the moment to be able to bridge, to be able to break down, help create personalization and help break down the choices and everything we do in a very easy way. So what I'm doing is building a system that provides health scores, but personalized health scores for everything in the products and everything we do in our environment. So
Hmm.
whether you are buying, your shampoo or a makeup product, we can give you a score based on that, and it's based on your biology. And so you get a score, and it tells you whether this is good for you or bad for you, and then we'll recommend alternative products. And
That's good.
really, the reason this has come again out is that whole concept of wanting to bring awareness. So everything that I do in all my various businesses is to bring that to be able to help people make more informed choices in an easy way. Because people, most of the time when I talk to people about it, they'll be like, "Oh, you're talking about all these different toxins and everything like this. It's too overwhelming.
Hmm.
Can't do anything about it." And I'm like, no, there's simple things that we can start to do. And once you have awareness, you it's easy. But you don't start with actually throwing everything away in one day and starting. You start with the key things and then slowly by slowly, and then it's your choice. The one thing that I felt when I discovered all of this for myself was where I got betrayed was I felt like I didn't make that choice.
Hmm.
So now I make the choice the same way, like we know sugar is not great for us, but we choose to eat the chocolate cake and the ice cream because we want to.
Yes, that's
You
true.
know? Like, I make that choice. Before, I
Hmm.
wasn't making the choice of choosing, a mattress that might be filled with PFAs that are going to cause me to have hormone problems or respiratory, like all these different. I didn't make that choice knowingly. And I think that's where I really want to help people is so they understand that because whether you're someone who's hypersensitive or you're somebody who's a high performer or you're just a mum, I think it's really unfair that you buy these things so often with good intention and they might not be great. And depending on where you are on the spectrum, or I call it like a rain barrel,
Hmm.
I think, there's so many stresses in our lives. There's stuff we can control and there's stuff we can't control.
Hmm.
What we keep on doing is we keep on filling this up, and at some point, it's going to overflow. And when that does, for each person, it's individual based on everything else going on in their life. And so I look at it being like, you know what? You can't often control the stresses you're going to get from maybe work stresses, or I mean, you could leave your job, but or financial stresses, or stresses from your children and stuff like that. You can't really control that, or a loss, a grief.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you can often control the stresses around what we put into our spaces and what we put into our bodies and where our body is. Those
Totally.
are the things that we can do to help reduce that load on ourselves. So we just, we're just more calm.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, our body's our base, right?
Exactly.
So if that goes wrong, then everything else is affected.
Yeah.
And I really like, how you point out it's not just taking vitamins, it's not just running around the block, or going to, dance studio or something. It is more complex than that in our times because there is so much irresponsible, um, let's call it stuff in our environment. I mean, try and escape 5G if you live in a town. It's impossible. I know people that are extremely sensitive to electric radiation and, they are desperate. I mean, there are some machines and things you can get, to alleviate some of it. But most of them don't, they can't live in towns.
Yeah.
It determines, a life choice that might have picked something else.
I
Um,
I was having this conversation the other day with a client of mine, and I was like, I think it's sometimes it feels as though, and they're trying to get pregnant, and we
mhm,
were having this conversation around radiation, but also talking about chemicals in our the space in general. And
mhm.
I was like, it feels as though we're kind of living in this human experiment. It it's we're exposed to stuff that our body and our cells, and our mitochondria, they have no idea what it is, right? And we've kind of taken, people have like, oh, it's safe, but there's no testing that's been done on it that's safe. And now that there is some research, particularly around electromagnetic radiation, you're starting to see more and more research coming out there. And you're starting to see it as well with some of the chemicals,
Mhm.
VOCs and microplastics and all those different things. We're starting to see the research come out. But but the speed in which the research is coming out is not fast enough to stop the from being it because this is all out there, and it really shocks me because I'm like, it is, we're exposing ourselves, we're exposing our children and the next generation to this experiment, and then expecting everyone to be healthy and not really understanding that, you know what, oopsies.
Well, let's be honest, it makes some people really rich, right?
It does.
And it
That's the
makes,
problem.
yeah, it makes the pharma industry really rich. I mean, I'm not saying that they're doing it consciously, but there is something really sick in the whole system where the priority is not healthy human beings. I mean, I've been around this planet for, a long time now, and I just, I'm no longer fooled by nice words and profit, that the
Yeah.
way it's usually framed. I'm not against profit at all, but against if it's framed against the health and the integrity of human beings, I think it's a problem. So I would like to segue into, we've talked about that you said that sustainability, for example, which is, huge buzzword and in a certain way also really important, yet it's not aligned with human well-being. And you said that what's eco-efficient isn't necessarily healthy. So we're going to be a bit rebellious here. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think one of the things I've noticed is the conversation around sustainability and eco is separate from health, and they're not together. So, a few examples. So, I had somebody come to me and they're like, "Oh, this is incredible, eco, healthy, hypoallergenic carpets." These were rugs. And I was like, okay. So I dug in and I started understanding, trying to understand. And I was like, how is it eco-friendly? How is it healthy? Let's run it. And I think people use the word eco and healthy together, and I'll explain that
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
detail. But if I carry on with this example, so I was digging into it, that I understood, okay, it's sustainable because it's using recycled fishing nets. So I was like, okay, what are the fishing nets made from? Get to it. It's plastic. All the different words. You use all the different words you get down to, it's plastic. And so I'm like, okay. Now the problem is you've got, this is sustainable, yes, although there's questions to be asked of the way in which these fishing nets, and it's also made from recycled bottle caps, are actually being processed, of whether actually long term in the whole life cycle, whether they actually are sustainable because of the amount of water, but that's a whole other conversation. But the thing that I realized, I was like, you're saying this is sustainable and eco, but it's really bad for your health because microplastics are, we are finding them. what shocks me, there's research that's finding them now in the placenta, which means babies that aren't even been born yet are carrying something that, they're not responsible for. They've got microplastics in their brain and in their placenta, and
And they're huge disruptors, nervous system
huge.
disruptors. So just imagine that.
100%. They're huge nervous system disruptors, they're gut disruptors, they're hormonal, they're terrible. But use this carpet because it's eco-friendly and hypoallergenic. And I'm like, well, it's hypoallergenic because it's plastic. It's it's eco. So yes, it's potentially sustainable, but it's not healthy. And you can find that often as well when you see, so cleaning detergents as well. People will use oft, I've had many people come to me like, oh my God, this is an amazing brand. It's great. It's eco. And I'm like, okay, let's get into it. Well, it's because it's using recycled X, Y, and Z, but those are really bad for your health. That's an endocrine disruptor. That's a thing. So it's not healthy. And or energy efficiency is a massive problem at the moment as well. So a lot of the energy efficient lights we use, they have such high blue spectrum lighting in them and flicker. So blue light is the part of the lighting spectrum that actually suppresses our melatonin, which
Mhm.
is helps us go to sleep. So really, especially if someone's sensitive and stuff like that, at night you want to be able to get really good sleep. And so the blue light is going to disrupt your sleep. So you won't get as deep sleep as you need. And the flicker, it's if remember in the old school days where you would take a photograph, you could take on your phone, you could take a photograph screen, and you'd see it flickering. Now,
Mhm.
most lights are doing that continuously, and our brain is having to process that out. So it's a huge stressor for us to continuously have to kind of adjust for that, which is why I find if you're in, because I've become very conscious of flickering lights and I have no flicker lights at home. So really, when I'm in spaces like malls or airports where they do have a lot of that, I can notice the headache more than I noticed it probably beforehand because I was used to it. And
Mm.
wow, this is such a stressor for my brain because it's just continuously having to process that. But that's
Mhm.
energy efficient. Well, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And so I think what I'd love to see, and there are people now in this movement, is how can we have the conversation together? How do we think about health for the planet and health for ourselves? Because there are ways of doing it. Clay, for example, as a material, clay
Mhm.
is such a great, easy, sustainable. It's natural, it's everywhere, but it's also so healthy for us. It's one of the best things you can do. It stops mold. It's super amazing for managing humidity because it releases moisture and it also absorbs moisture. So it's one of
Mhm.
the best things to do. It's a natural material. It's there. It's easy to get. So there's things we can do versus instead of having a recycled made from something something finish on the wall and you're like no just go for clay. Why are we overly complicating it? And so that's part of the conversation that I really would love us to be having more is let's bring these two disciplines together because I'm an environmentalist. I believe in sustainability and I'm very conscious about my choices and the
Mhm.
impact they have on the planet. So I don't want the users to think that listeners, sorry, to think that I'm not conscious. I'm very conscious. But I think the conversation needs to be the two together and as a whole. And when we're able to bridge those two together, I feel like then we're basically creating a healthy planet because you're creating healthy humans as well as, thinking about the health of the planet.
Yeah, I mean, because what's healthy for us is healthy for the planet because we are part of the planet and we are, we are animals basically. So,
Yes.
at least our body is. And I think, this, what I observe more and more is this ideology, this tendency that if you agree with the right ideology, then everything's fine. And I think buzzwords and ideology is not going to do it. And you described it really, really well. That what's hidden underneath the nice and shiny label is
Yeah.
what really counts. And that if you're interested is in real sustainability, then you need to look deeper.
Yeah. 100%. There's a lot of I mean, greenwashing, I think, is definitely something it's a big thing, and you see it in all industries. And whether it's in the fashion industry, whether it's in the music, there's this, you know, it's it's very trendy to use anything to do with sustainability, right? But it's like actually, is this really, one, is this really sustainable from a full life cycle perspective? But then two, is it good for us?
Mm-hmm.
And all the other animals and everything else. And so you
Yeah.
the questioning, I think we often don't question what we're being told, we just accept it. And that's one of the things that I really learned through my
Mm-hmm.
journey is to question, to not just assume just because someone is saying something is good means it's good. I think there's a level of unfortunately where right now the way things are is we need to take a bit of ownership on ourselves.
A bit, a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Let me be
Yeah.
blunt again. Yeah, a lot. Um, yeah, right. I'm just writing a book about that. Maybe that's why I'm also so passionate about this
Oh,
topic.
I can't wait to read it. But
Yeah,
yes.
and I just found a publisher or the publisher, a really good publisher that accepted me. But anyway, that's another discussion we can have happily. Um, where would you point people, either to your site or where could they continue to educate themselves on this?
There, I'd love if I'm on LinkedIn quite actively, so it's Shreya Vahora. So
Hmm.
that's Shreya, Vahora, Vohora. So I publish quite a lot of stuff on there, and then I have a Substack, a newsletter that I put out a couple of times a week, where I dive deeper into lots of different topics, and I try and make it fun and educational at the same time, so it's not too dry. And
Hmm.
that's called Vibrant Living Lab. So. I'd love the listeners if they would love to learn more. They can check. If they've got any questions as well, they can just reach out to me either through that or LinkedIn. And I really love being able to, answer questions that people have and address problems that maybe they're struggling with or
Hmm.
things they're looking for. And that's something that I enjoy doing because I think we all learn from each other.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I learned a lot from you too.
Thank
So,
you.
my last question is always, what did I not ask? What did I miss that you think might be important for the
I think
listeners?
I think maybe the one question or maybe think one thing that I can leave the listeners with is, what's the simplest five things maybe that they could go away
Mhm.
and do with
Mhm.
today. So,
Great.
what I will focus on, because I think the area that's most important and where I always say is my starting point is your bedroom.
Hmm.
We all know how important sleep is for us. Without really getting that restorative sleep, it's so crucial. So my fundamental point is if you can't do anything for anywhere else, make sure your bedroom is your sanctuary and your children's bedrooms are their sanctuary. And so the five things that I would say in that room to start off with, and you can go slow and steady, is first thing is I really think ventilation is key. So obviously, if you're in a really polluted city, be mindful of when you open up the window because you don't want to be bringing in all the outdoor pollution. But typically, really early mornings, on average, typically have less outdoor pollution when you look at the statistics than later on in the day. So early morning, if you just crank up the wait window for 20 minutes. One of the things that I like to say is if you can get a good HEPA air purifier. I think they're crucial to helping people with, with allergies, with your ability to sleep at night as well. You'll notice a difference because we have so many indoor air pollution from stuff that's off-gassing, from the cleaning, all these different stuff that we use. So getting a good air purifier is just it's a good safety net. So that's my one when it comes to air. The second one is I would say look at lights. So one of the easiest things to do is sleep is so important. You don't need to make, you can start to look at fancy lighting later on, but to keep it really simple, if you think about how we've evolved at night it used to be fire, which was eye level or below, and it was red and amber. So the easiest thing to do is a few hours, like maybe an hour or 2 hours before you go to sleep, don't use the overhead lights because that's signaled to us beforehand. Sun, if we think about evolution, right?
Hmm.
Sun means day, warm firelight means sleep. So at night, put a bedside lamp on. Don't put your overhead lights on top. And if you can get one of the amber, can you get one of the old kind of lights, that's lamps, that's even better. So, and plus it just feels really nice and cozy to go in like to have low level lamps. So that's the other tip that I would say as well. The third tip is really look at your um, electric devices near you.
Hmm.
So it's really crucial. Keep away from your head, your brain. There's so many studies that have been done out there and the impact they have. Now, some people might be like, oh, but I need X, Y, and Z. So the real key is if you can't take it out of the room, what I say is distance is king. So the further away you can put it in your room, put it away from you, the better it is. If you can put it in the room next door, even better, but the further away is better. Don't have alarm clock devices, any of those things. Try and keep stuff away from your head, ideally. So really push everything further away. If, for example, if you're a mum and you've got a baby monitor, hardwire it in. Don't do it Bluetooth or wireless. You can just get
Hmm.
like the old school, the cables, put that in. So I'm not saying don't have it. I'm just saying being a bit more cautious about what you're positioning and how you're using it. Ideally, you don't want a TV in your bedroom, but if you do, just turn it all off. You can get these really click easy, they're like £5 devices where you just
Hmm.
basically can kill the power in your room. Um, so that's my things. My fourth one, my fifth one, I think I'm on my fifth one,
Hmm.
um, is the last one is um, think about the materials on the stuff of what you're sleeping on. So often we really want to be thinking about natural materials. So cotton, wool, linen, um, those are ideally. So that's both in weight, the mattress you're using, but also your bed linen and your pillows. So down, feather, those kind of different things. Because a lot of the synthetic stuff is made from polyester. It's made from a bunch of different things that are cause a variety of problems. Firstly, they make you feel really hot actually at night. So whereas you're sleeping in linen, it actually feels really great. It's healing. But this synthetic stuff makes you feel really hot. It's known as hormone disruptors. It's known as gut problems. You have, you can get more severe issues like asthma. You can get all these. There's a host and host of complications of things that are associated with a lot of this stuff. So I just say, just try going natural. If you can't do your mattress straight away, at least change to your bed linen and just slowly tear it up. So those are my
Yeah,
tips.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for this practical addition at the end. And thank you also very much for this conversation.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.